Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. My name is Peyton. I am the well-seasoned traveler. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I decided or how I chose my expat destination. Now, I've already done a video of some things to consider when choosing your expat destination, but I just want to talk you through a little bit about how I chose my destination. And the process that I went through. All right, so let's jump in. I started with proximity to family. I still have family in the United States. I have some young nieces and nephews that I'm interested in being near or as near as possible to. Obviously, I don't want to be in the US, so I don't want to be right next door to them, but I do want to be near them. I want to be around as they're growing up. So proximity to the US was where I started, which means I shut out a large portion of the planet, right? I didn't even bother to look because I wanted something that was within a 5 or 6 hour flight of the US of getting to my family. So that really helped me narrow down the area that I was even willing to look. Obviously, I didn't look too far into South America. I didn't look into Europe. I didn't look anywhere in Africa or Southeast Asia or any of that. I really kept it tight to Mexico, Central America, and a couple of countries in South America, specifically Ecuador and Colombia. Those were the two that were on my list. All right, so I started with proximity to family. If proximity to family is not important to you, that opens you up to a huge amount of places that you can check out. Good luck, that's a lot. But if that is what you have, that's what you have to work with. And next, for me, I knew I needed to be in a major city. So I've traveled a lot. I've lived in a lot of different places. I am a city girl at heart. I love being in a city. I love everything that a city has to offer. Because I've lived in a number of different cities, I also know that a city the size that's like 1 million people is too small for me. I need at least 1.5 million people. You'd be surprised. I can feel that 500,000 difference. And preferably my sweet spot is cities with like 3 to 5 million people. Those are the cities I felt the most comfortable in my travels. But obviously I ended up in Mexico City with a city of 20 plus million people, but it is a very spread out city. So it does feel smaller when you're in neighborhoods. But I knew, like I said, I knew that I needed to be in a city, and I knew that proximity to the US were two major things that were non-negotiables for me in terms of where I was going to move, where I'm planning to expat to. The next thing I considered was cost of living. So I have been lucky. I've lived in Sydney, Australia. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in LA. I've lived in Seattle. So I've lived in some of the most expensive cities, definitely some of the most expensive cities in the US. And then with Sydney, I've lived in one of the most expensive cities in the world. I don't need the most expensive city. I actually prefer second cities. So not the main city, but the smaller offshoot city that is scrappy and has to do its work in order to compete with the main city. That's my real jam, that second city that has all of the offerings of the main city, but does not have the concentration of people. I don't actually like living in places that have a high concentration of people, which is, again, strange that I chose Mexico City, and I do understand that, and I'm not saying that it's logical, but I think the difference, Mexico City, like Los Angeles, is so spread out that you don't feel how big it actually is until, of course, you're trying to get from one side to the other, and it's going to take you hours. But day to day, it doesn't feel cramped like New York. It doesn't feel cramped like San Francisco because it's not on an island. I don't like island main cities just because by virtue of being on an island or being in a small area, you have a high concentration of people. That goes against what I enjoy. So this was all supposed to be about cost of living. Cost of living meant that I looked at a number of cities and just checked them out and said no because they were just too expensive. But since my proximity was really Mexico, Central and South America, I didn't have that issue as much because those cities are all lower cost cities than cities in the US. So I was able to look around a little bit more at different cities than what I would maybe expect, because cost of living, which is how I got to Mexico City, because cost of living is so much lower in Mexico than it is in the U.S., in Central America than it is in the U.S. So cost of living was something, because of where I cast my net in terms of looking, wasn't really something that was a high factor, but it is obviously a factor. Next, and something else that's really important to me is transportation and mobility. Because I'm in a city, I want public transportation. I want to be able to get on buses and trains. I want to be able to get from one side of the city to the other without having to get into a taxi or an Uber or a Lyft or a Diddy or a Rappi or any of those things, right? Even if they're less expensive, I want those options. I want them around, but I want to be able to hop on a bus or a train and get to wherever I need to go with ease. So I had to make sure that any city that I chose had public transportation. These cities without public transportation, places like LA, although I hear LA is getting better, I haven't been there in 20 years, so I don't know. I haven't lived there, I should say. I haven't lived there in 20 years, so I don't know. When I lived there, it was a car. You had to have a car. I'm here in Northern California, you have to have a car. The bus, even in Northern California, as far out as I am, the bus and the train system don't work out here. Or don't work well out here. So, excuse me. So transportation and mobility is a major thing for me. So any place I go, the first thing I do is Google, do you have public transportation? Do you have trains? And then I read what it says and can say, okay, yes, I'll go check that city out. No, I won't check that city out. There's no point. They've got nothing to offer me. The next thing I considered was climate and weather. So I am one of the many people that suffers from seasonal affect disorder. It is unfun, let me tell you. But it means that I have to be really careful about where I plan to live. I can't be in a place that has very, very heavy overcast days, significant amount of overcast days. Chicago is really one of my favorite cities in the world, but the fact that winter, first of all, that winter is brutal. I could not handle winter there. But also even fall and spring, even if it's not freezing cold, which it is 6 months of the year there, which is just too many months for me. When it's not freezing cold, it was so gray and overcast that it made it hard for me to survive, in all honesty. It makes it really hard for me to live in a place that's really gray, that's really overcast. I can take some rain, but I can't take consistent rain like Seattle, where it was gray and rainy kind of all the time. It was sunny in Seattle too. It's beautiful when it was sunny, but when it was gray and raining, it was just, that's where I discovered I had seasonal affect disorder, was in Seattle, because I could not stop crying, and it did not stop raining, and I did not stop crying. So climate and weather is a really big, important aspect to my final destination. The other thing I always take into account is things like water. Is there water? There are places in Mexico that have run out of water. Mexico it's all bottled water. You can't drink the water from the tap because the pipes are so old. Even if the water is clean, once they go through the pipes, the water's dirty again. But there are places that are struggling, that are having water issues that I haven't even visited. Morelia, I think, is one of those places. In Querétaro, I'm saying that badly, Querétaro, also had some water issues. So I didn't even go visit because they were having water supply issues, and the residents were struggling to get their water needs met. So I wasn't going to go there and put extra pressure on the water system as a traveler. It just didn't make any sense to me. But it also means it's not a place that I would live, because they have significant water issues already. And I know that stuff is coming. I'm trying to find a place where I can put it off as long as possible. But climate, things like natural disasters, that I took that into account. A lot of people are like, why don't you just go to an island and live on an island? Because a lot of islands have hurricanes, and they spend half their year underwater or worrying about being underwater, and that's not how I want to live. So that is something to take into account. If you are an island girl or guy, or they, you have to take into account that there are going to be major climate issues annually and repeatedly, and they're going to get stronger and faster and come more rapidly as the years go by. So that is something that I always tell people to consider. I don't think most people consider the climate crisis when they are looking for their next expat destination, but I highly recommend you consider it. And then the last thing I consider, which is actually often the first thing that I consider, if I'm honest, is lifestyle. So for me, the perfect lifestyle is living in a building a couple of floors up, or living in a high-rise building, having a balcony, being able to walk out of my front door and have restaurants and cafes and coffee shops around and grocery stores around, so that when I don't want to do anything, if I just have to leave my house and go a couple of blocks, I can get anything I need. When I do want to do something, I can leave my house, walk, up to a mile, find everything I need. I can also run into art. I want some place that I'm an art lover. I love large scale art. I love street art, graffiti art, and large scale sculpture. So I want a place where I'm walking around and there's art to my left and art to my right. And I'm just like, oh, this is amazing, right? That's really the kind of place that I want. That for me is the lifestyle, as well as being able to access other types of art. I'm a big lover of the dance, and of the theater. I love those things. So having that around is very important to me, but also really just being able to walk outside and be amazed that someone did some incredible graffiti art, and take pictures of it and love on it and share it with my friends and family. So that is the kind of lifestyle that I'm looking for. Everything has to be accessible to me on foot. There has to be good food around me easily. People have to be kind and generous and open and warm. And I want to be able to see art when I want to. And I want to be able to see art when I'm not even planning to see art. I had a great day in Mexico City one day. I was walking down the street and I literally looked to my right, and there happened to be a sculpture garden right there. And it was the last day of the sculpture exhibition of Dali and Monet. I think that's right, Dali and Monet. Beautiful sculptures that I'd never seen before in my life. Stunning. And it literally was happenstance. That's my kind of lifestyle that I'm looking for, that I happen upon something amazing on just a random day as I'm walking to the grocery store or whatever. So those are really the things that I consider when I was choosing my sort of non-negotiables, when I was choosing my expat destination. Proximity to family, a major city, or the type of living environment that you like. For me, it's a major city with at least 1 million people, 1.5 million people or more. Reasonable cost of living, transportation and mobility, and along with transportation and mobility, which I said last time, is connectedness. It has to be someplace that has good, fast internet connection, preferably places with internet connection outside. So in parks, I know Mexico City and some of their public parks, they offer free Wi-Fi. That is even better if I have a place where parts of the city offer free Wi-Fi. Weather and climate and lifestyle. So those are all the aspects that I considered when I was looking for my final place. And I literally started with Googling. When I started, I Googled the major cities in Mexico, came up with a list, and really was like, okay, all of these cities have over 1 million people. This is my list of cities to go visit. I actually think I started with over 2 million and then dropped down to 1 million. Because there are Mexico City is obviously the largest city in Mexico, and then the other cities are like 2 million people. So it's a really, really, really large gap between the 24, I think, million people in Mexico City and, the next biggest city, Toluca or Querétaro or Oaxaca. I think Oaxaca has over 1.5 million. But I really just started with Google and Googled the largest cities. I knew when I was looking at Colombia, I knew that Medellin was a large city, so I looked there. I looked at Bogota, read the reviews, heard that Bogota was a little grittier. I don't love gritty. What I love about Mexico City is it is so clean and beautiful. I don't like dirty cities. I love things that are clean and beautiful. Clean floors is my jam. So clean sidewalks is also my jam. Mexico City does a lot of cleaning, not everywhere, but a lot of places are just sparkling clean. It's beautiful and I love it. So that is why I chose Medellin over Bogota. Medellin had a better reputation for cleanliness. Bogota was known to be grittier, and I don't need gritty. I'm not gritty. I am bougie. I am. It's true. So that is really how I went. I started with Google. I looked at city size, and then I went from there and started traveling to the different cities to find out what would work for me and what would not, and did process of elimination, and really only went to Mexico City because I had a layover there, and ended up going out, or no, I had to take a flight out of there. I think I was in not Guanajuato, Guadalajara. No, I flew out of Guadalajara. Regardless, I had a layover in Mexico City, ended up going out to get food, ended up staying, unbeknownst to me, was staying right by the Salvador Dali Museum, which is free, and you can just walk in and see these incredible frescoes that he's done. I don't know if they're called frescoes or paintings, but they're insanely beautiful. And was just like, oh, I literally walked out of the hotel, found some incredible tacos, and stumbled on a museum. This is where I want to live. This is how I want to live. So it was really happenstance that took me to Mexico City, but I fell in love, and here we are. The plan is to move there in October. So I hope some of this was helpful for you, and gave you an idea just of my thought process of how I go through thinking about things and thinking about moving. And please let me know if you have any questions. Please like and subscribe the video. Questions in the question and answer section below. I'd love to answer any questions for you, or hear about your process and how you came upon your expat destination. I've heard some people say they literally went for a weekend vacation and never left. And other people have said that they had no idea. They went someplace and fell in love with it, and then just kept going back and back and discovered that it was their place. And other people like me traveled around, really looked around for their place and found it, or haven't found it. Some people haven't found it. They're still bopping around. So I hope this helps you a little bit. Thank you for your time. This was a long one today. Try and make it a little bit shorter next time. But again, I'm Peyton. I'm the well-seasoned traveler. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.